Welcome to another edition of California Triathlon Soup. Today's guest is the founder of HFP Racing, Shannon Kurek. Welcome to the California Triathlon Soup, Shannon.
Hey, Tom, thanks so much for having me. After you let me in on who past guests have been, I feel privileged to be sitting here getting a chance to be on your podcast.
Well, we do like to say that, we have probably 8, 10, 12 people that maybe listen to it. So the nicest part about this podcast is, you can say anything you want to, and probably nobody will ever hear it. So feel free.
Oh, that's a good one. I'll make sure
I
a few
wanted to
more
have
people get to hear it.
Good. I wanted to have you on the podcast on California Triathlon Soup. You are the founder of HFP Racing in Ohio, and I'd love for you to go through. You've been doing that, I believe, for 32 years, and I would love for you to talk about what you've seen in the last 32 years. And get some of your thoughts about racing. We've never had, we've only had maybe one or two race directors on the podcast over the last few years. So this is a great opportunity to get insight into your world.
Well, thankfully, being around the sport long enough and starting at such a young age, I've literally seen, historical events happen, technology changes, you name it, over the last 32 years. I mean, I was a senior in high school when we came up with what was health and fitness promotions, and which was going to create a triathlon for a fundraiser the following summer. That's how this whole thing got started. I mean, there certainly wasn't a template for success out there to be a race director, because people weren't doing it full time, 32 years ago, or very few were. There was a handful of national events out there. When I got started, it was the Coors Light series was getting going. The Bud Light Triathlon series was around, which was a big deal. Cat Sports were the big dogs in the people that I looked up to. That's why I'd love to do this someday as my full-time job. And things just started very slowly, because it wasn't like, as I mentioned, there wasn't a template for success, because you didn't see how everybody else was doing it. It was a hodgepodge of races, mostly on a very, very grassroots level. Was 95% of the races at the time. So these were, little fundraising events with no bike racks in a field next to a lake, and with no particular rules in place. That's how most of the racing was back in the 80s. And that's when we got started.
And, you have some, like your signature events of the Triple T is an example of one of your signature events. Tell me how many years that's been around, and tell me a little bit more of that event. I mean, I had heard about that event many years ago when I first started. Even out in California, we'd heard of Triple T.
Well, it is our signature event. It's what most people know about us. If you ever go on Slow Twitch and search for Triple T, you really won't hear anything about that event except rave reviews, just and athletes having amazing experiences at it, because it is an event that's not replicated anywhere else. I know over the last 16 years, this would have been year number 16. However, due to the pandemic, it obviously didn't happen. It was scheduled to happen at the end of this month, over the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the last weekend of May. But over the last 17 years, events have come around that tried to replicate it. It's very difficult. I mean, it takes a combination of an incredibly I guess, just you have to have an amazing venue that doesn't mind you coming in and shutting down the place for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You got to have on-site lodging. There's a lot of things that take place that make this the epic event that it is, along with the fact that you're racing Friday a night race, and then you do 2 races on Saturday, and then finish with a half Ironman on Sunday. Uh, Everybody we make wear the same apparel, so we have them in a American Triple T top. So it takes it adds a real a level of intimacy to the event because everybody looks the same regardless. You can have elite athletes there. I mean, we had pros racing last year all the way down to the weekend warriors. Even sometimes we get crazy people that come there and that's their first triathlon every year. But they're all towing the start line and they're out on that run course and they're passing each other and they're all sporting the top. So eventually, as they say, misery likes company, and this event really embodies that feel, and then eventually being together in the transition with the same folks over the 4 races, you get to know people, relationships get created, bonds get created, and there's again that level of intimacy that cannot be replicated at another event. They just can't be, and we have the recipe for it. And we limit the event to 400 individuals, and we get about 37 states represented every year, and it's just an incredible event. And the American Triple T was something that some of my training buddies were sitting around talking about. Ideas for events, and one of them mentioned, hey, there's this crazy event in France called the French Iron Tour, and it was a pro only event. It was like 6 days of pro racing. It was kind of like a Tour de France for professional triathletes, and we're like, oh, wouldn't that be cool to do, but like over a long weekend so we could still get to work on Monday. And we came up with the Ohio Iron Tour. That was a one-time event, at least under that name, as we got a nice little letter from the attorneys of Ironman telling us we can't use that name. And so we flipped it around the next year, and we decided to call it the American Triple T. And originally it started off because the French Iron Tour was a team event, so you needed teammates. The American Triple T was a 3-person team event, not like a relay event where you have a swim biker and runner, but you had 3 teammates that needed to do the race together individually, but their times came together as a collaborated for the team total time, and that's how we scored it. Now it's a completely individual race. It morphed into just being a completely solo event. We don't have even a team category anymore, but it's just a bunch of crazy people coming together for just a wild weekend. And I mentioned the secret sauce to the event was that great venue, but the really most important thing is the on-site lodging. So we stage this event at in Cambridge, Ohio, at Salt Fork State Park. It's the largest state park in Ohio, 40,000 acres, beautiful rolling terrain. And the lodging is literally, there's cabins and an actual lodge, all within. Some of the cabins are literally 100 feet from the transition area, if you're lucky enough to get that. So what's so unique is people being able to get 8 or 10 of their teammates and jam them into a cabin, and you're there the whole weekend, and then your next door neighbors, you get to know them, and after every race you're drinking a few beers and trying to recover, and that's what makes this event so cool. And everywhere you look, the only person you're seeing is someone related to this event, so that makes it really special. And it really is an opportunity for us to pour all the attention on the athlete, and that's just very difficult to do at any other event. I mean, this is just something that the venue, the accommodations, and the style of the racing makes it so you can just come there and you get the red carpet treatment. It's a very special and rewarding race.
And you don't have to do, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have to do all 4 races? Or if I wanted to show up on Friday night, could I do just that or just something on Saturday? Or do you have to do everything?
If you're going to be in the American Triple T, you got to do all 4 races. So the Friday night starts off with the super sprint. So at 5 o'clock on Friday, you're jumping in for a 250-yard swim, a 6K bike, and a 1-mile run. And what we do, everything is started based on your seeded time, and we get the seedings by finding out what your fastest half Ironman time is. And then, so theoretically, the person standing there getting ready to jump into the water wearing the bib number 1 has got the fastest half Ironman time of all 400 individuals. And that allows us to do a dual time trial start. So we do number 1 and 2 are standing on the boat dock first, and then everybody else behind them in the order of their race number. And so when the horn goes off, number 1 and 2 jumps off the dock in the water, and then 5 seconds later. So it really gives us an opportunity to meter the flow into the water by ability level. And it really makes for really fair racing, and also just a really cool spectacle when you see everybody standing there lined up. They're all looking the same, especially on Friday night when no one's wearing any wetsuits usually. And then on Saturday, you got to get up and do an Olympic sprint or an Olympic, or excuse me, you have to do a Saturday morning sprint distance or a Saturday morning Olympic distance, because we have two divisions. We have an XT division, which ends up totaling 140 plus miles, and the ST division totals 70 plus miles. So basically either a half Ironman or a full Ironman over the 4 days. And then the PM race, again, is you're either racing an Olympic race or a sprint race, which happens at 3 p.m. So you have about 4 hours in between those races to recover. Then you wake up Sunday morning for either a half Ironman distance race or an Olympic distance race if you're in the sprint distance race to cap off the weekend. Now, we do have a Sunday only race that we offer, and that is the Tough Man Ohio brand race that we offer, and that is a half Ironman only race. So you can come in if you want to get a little taste of the American Triple T. You can come in and do the Tough Man Ohio race, which starts after all the American Triple T folks are in the water, and we do brand that accordingly. So because it's so important for us that the American Triple T takes the is put on kind of the we don't want to take anything away from the American Triple T. So having a Sunday only race with folks coming in that are fresh and having been racing all week, we want to make sure it's very important for us to distinguish the two. So people that are racing in the Tough Man Ohio, we actually make them wear Tough Man Ohio tri-top that distinguishes them, so that when they're out battling on the course, when someone goes flying by, maybe that's very fresh on the bike, they can look over and go, oh, okay, that's the Tough Man Ohio race. I don't have to worry about that. And we also encourage the Tough Man Ohio folks to make sure that they're out there being encouragers of the other athletes that have been there all weekend, because they are guests of the event that is taking place.
And I just looked at your website for last year, and it looks like there were 54 finishers of Tough Man Ohio. Is that standard? Is that a typical Tough Man Ohio participation?
Yeah, we don't allow more than 75 in that race. We just don't want to overwhelm the venue. When we already have 400 in the American Triple T, that's really where we want to be at. Keeping the number of total racers on the course on Sunday at 500, under 500 is where we want to be. And again, we want to make this the most amazing event they've ever been to. And, so for us to give the kind of customer service and race experience, we could keep the race open. We sold out this year almost 6 months in advance for the American Triple T. We could certainly leave it open and bring in more athletes, but we would prefer the race to be the size that we have been for all these years and really service the athletes. I mean, when they're done with every race, they're getting a catered meal right after they cross the finish line. So we try to give them, 5-star, like I said, red carpet experience at the American Triple T every year.
And so, depending on the format, if what I've heard correctly is you could end up having 140.6 miles that weekend, or you could have 70.3 miles that weekend. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's you either race in the ST division or the XT. And it's about a 50-50 combination. The XT is, and everybody walks away with the same coveted belt buckle, other than the facts of the sizes are a little different. So we give away this very, very large belt buckle for the XT, and then a smaller version of it for the ST, and as well the coveted finisher jacket. And those jackets are both the same for both divisions.
Do athletes, you've been doing this many years, do athletes say it's easier to do would it be easier to do a 140.6 at one time, or is it easier to have it broken up like this into 4 parts? It seems like it would be harder to. This seems like this would be a harder format because you've got all that, all those breaks.
Well, yeah, on paper, most people that have never taken on the event would be like, "Oh yeah, this has got to be easier than Ironman." But if you go to Slow Twitch and you do a little reading on it, you'll find that most people will say it's much harder. Plus, the terrain is extremely challenging, and what folks have difficulty doing because it's exciting. You're racing, so it's hard to hold back. And if you and ultimately the veterans that are there that have done the race many years in a row know how to meter their efforts so that on Sunday they can still have a pretty good performance. But regardless, even those veterans will tell you when you wake up on Sunday, you cannot believe you have to do another race.
I did Ragnar, gosh, maybe 10 years ago. And it was a combination, maybe 7 miles, 8 miles each, 3 times. And with blocks of, might have been 6, 7 hours in between the blocks. And the first one you go out and you hammer it, and you say you're not going to because, that's not smart, but you do it. And then the second one comes up and your muscles are a little tight, especially after everything cooling down. And then by the third one, I mean, you're just hoping to not have an injury and hang on. And there's not much left in most folks' legs by that third one. So I cannot even imagine that. So that sounds like a really cool challenge. Fantastic.
Well, and then there's also one other unique element that makes it even more difficult. That PM race on Saturday afternoon, we change it up a bit on them, and it's a bike, swim, run event. So they start off time trial on the bike, and they come back and they gotta figure out, how do I transition to the bike to the swim? How do I get my wetsuit on? All these things. There's some unique things that the veterans that have done the event certainly know how to do that. But regardless, your body reacts completely differently 3 races in, and then suddenly you're getting off your bike and jumping in the water and coming out and finding out how your body responds to bike, swim, run format.
Well, and Triple T isn't the only event you have. You have a lot of events. Do you want to cover those a little
Yeah,
bit?
sure. I mean, we've been doing the Fit Family Series, which was the original State of Ohio series. This would have been year number 29 of the series. It's 6 races, goes into all the major demographics in Ohio, Toledo, Cleveland, Akron, Columbus area, Dayton, Cincinnati, at wonderful state park venues. we feature triathlon and duathlons at the events, as well as a Saturday kids race. For the adults, we have the mini distance, which is kind of like an entry level triathlon that features a 250 yard swim, 7 mile bike, 2 mile run. And then we have the sprint and Olympic distance triathlon and duathlon events going on all simultaneously.
And how many, with all those different markets being covered, how many athletes actually either register or finish a race in your Ohio series every year?
Yeah, we get about 6,000 athletes that run through the series every year. And, the series has got some incredible history to it. It started off, uh, like I said, it was the original series in Ohio. It started off with 4 events, just a triathlon series, just one single distance. And then I had some buddies that were duathletes, and I'm like, I got to figure out how to get this part of our series. And this was right after this. So this is like 1994. And so we started doing the triathlon and duathlon simultaneously, and it was not being done anywhere. I mean, people were calling us from all over the country uh, trying to figure out how to do this. Because again, this is back before chip timing and a lot of the innovations that make and the programming that make that, you know, commonplace now, and no one even thinks about it. You just sign them up and you do it. But the thought of running simultaneous races where you have swimmers going in the water and a duathlon start and that just wasn't even being done. So we created that. We got really good at it, and then suddenly everybody was doing it. And now it's almost unheard of to have a race that doesn't have multiple distances and multiple disciplines, whether it be triathlon, duathlon, going on at the same time.
And it's duathlon, especially. You mentioned what shall not be mentioned, COVID, about 5 minutes into this. So we try not to talk about it too much, but I would say that this year might be, especially with lack of swimming pools, might be a really good year for duathlons.
Well, if even that gets to take place, I mean, we're preparing for a triathlon season and duathlon season that doesn't happen. The percentages of that scenario happen are much higher than actually being able to have a season. The state of Ohio, our governor is one of the most conservative governors uh, so far with regards to the COVID-19. I mean, we were one of the first states that shut things down, and the rollout that he announced this Tuesday is extremely conservative. It's safe. It's well thought out, but certainly triathlons and duathlons and mass participation events aren't a high priority right now.
Right, and that's got to bring up. So you've spent 32 years building a company, building a brand, and that has to have you thinking about your entity, where does your company go in the next 10 years? Have you put any thoughts into that?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, especially when your partner in the business is also your wife of 27 years. You get to the point where you're like, wow, do we want to keep doing this? We're both. Jennifer turns 50 on May 22nd. I've already turned 50. Uh, People are like, well, gosh, you're young, but I've been in this industry since the first year out of high school. So we got consumed with what we could do in this business, in this industry, and uh, helped create the template that a lot of race directors use moving right now. And we were got to be part of a lot of cool things. I mean, we were one of the first chip timers in Ohio. Got to we got to do a lot of. We put on an independent Ironman race in Ohio. We were the first to put a half Ironman distance race on. We grew as the sport and the industry grew as well. We started becoming in demand with servicing events, and really the servicing side of our business is the larger part of our business, servicing other events, other large mass participation events like large running events with 15 or 20,000 participants, whether it's coming in and providing the barricading and traffic control, or being involved in all aspects from the operational side, from permitting until race execution. We're involved in a lot of that. So the events that we started with, that we own, that we still own today, the Fit Family Series, our Fall Challenge, and the American Triple T, those are just what is that? That's eight weekends that we have our own events that we own. The rest of the weekends, and I think we only had 6 weekends off in 2019, are events that we're servicing. So that's a grind. I mean, that's certainly a grind. And in full disclosure, we have been looking at some sort of exit strategy for myself and Jen, so that we can pay a little more attention to our 3 kids that are getting older, that are involved in travel, sports, and our time on the road doesn't accommodate that very well. So so we have been.
You're a brave man, but oh, sorry, you're a brave man to out your wife's age on air. That is a brave man.
Yeah, that is. I just realized that could come back to haunt me. But
how old are your kids?
So my kids, I have a 13-year-old Ezra, a 15-year-old Madeline, and then I have an 18-year-old that just graduated from high school with a tech degree. He took his last 2 years outside of the normal high school and was in a tech program. So he had 1 week off after he graduated, and he's been working full time ever since. I'm very proud of him. That's Henry.
And are they smart enough? Are they smart enough to stay away from the family business?
Well, yeah, and that's probably part of the reason that we've been considering the exit strategy, because we always thought, oh, this would be great, kids will love it, and they were raised in it. I mean, we traveled around in an RV, and when they were smaller, and they were there. I mean, their exposure to this industry is significant, and they raced in the kids' races. They helped when we're laying out barricades or whatever when they're old enough. They were behind the packet pickup table, handing out race numbers, you name it, they were doing it. And, it taught them great lessons, but it also taught them lessons like, wow, I do not want to get up that early every weekend. It's crazy. I mean, you think about it, and how many, most folks, might work 40 or 50 hours a week. I mean, that's like a part-time job for this industry. I mean, you add up the weekends, you don't even count your hours when you get on site. I mean, you've already put in 40 or 50 before you got there. So, I love it. I love this lifestyle. It's allowed me to do the sport that I love, which is triathlon. That's a very important lifestyle that I must accommodate to keep me sane. And I passionately love racing, but I don't get to race much because of our schedule. I mean, I do prioritize making it to USA Triathlon's age group nationals every year. I try to make sure our schedule never conflicts with that, and I usually try to throw in long course nationals or a long course race at the end of the year in November when our schedule allows. But other than that, I've worked 3 or 4 days around Thanksgiving every single Thanksgiving for the last 15 years. Every New Year's Day I've worked. There's holiday events. There's so much of that when you're younger you love it. It's exciting. You take the business on. You certainly don't shy away from it. And because you're an entrepreneur, you take on as much as you can. Then as things get complicated, as your family grows and so forth, then you realize, wow, I've been doing this for what most people would consider a career and get ready to retire. I certainly can't imagine retiring, but you know, I would love to be able to train more than I work. That,
Well, you have in your event services business, how many feet of fencing do you have? Like, all the different assets that you have to support events. I mean, it's pretty impressive, the collection of things that you have acquired over 3 decades. Will you share with, some of the folks that listen exactly all the stuff that you have available and that you bring to races?
yeah, I mean, we have enough, for our state, our series, the venues that we're at, maximum capacity is about 800, far as parking and for the venue to accommodate. So triathlon equipment wise, we have enough for 800. That's bike racks, that's sound, that's barricading, that's swim buoys, that's everything. But we have trailers full of barricade that we take to major marathons and major running events. So there's several miles of that loaded up on trailers in our warehouse that we can accommodate. Several thousand traffic cones. And just endless amounts of signage and A-frames that we use to assist and service our events. Along with, I feel like we have some of the best technology when it comes to timing events. We use a pretty common timing equipment. We use a German-made brand called Race Result, but the software that we use is something that was created by Rob Childers, who was the founder of Multi Race down in Miami. He eventually sold his company to focus on his software side of his company. I think it's the best in the business. It allows us to do some things that a lot of races have difficulty doing, and we do it very easily and do it very well. To the benefit, of course, to our
The timers.
customers. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of lag here. The timers, that's another tough business. It's one of those things where if you get everything right, nobody says anything. Like, and if you don't, well, everybody knows about it. And I don't think there's ever been a athlete who leaves a venue and said, "Boy, that timing was super accurate today." Like, have you ever heard that expression?
Well, maybe recently. I mean, but we cut our teeth on learning how to do timing with multi-sport races with basically software that was better suited for running events, and there wasn't a real good way of doing it. And then eventually, when we got into what we have now, that Rob created, where it's a part of the registration system. So when athletes are registering, they're in our timing system. I mean, we don't have to transfer data, so that eliminates errors. And because it's all being done in a live format in a browser-based software, it allows us to do changes anytime, and it's constantly uploading data every 5 seconds. So it even if you somehow got there and you were registered for an Olympic distance race, you didn't tell us you wanted to switch to the sprint, and you went down there across the start mat as a sprint distance athlete, finished the race and crossed the finish line, and then looked up at the monitors and were like, "Oh gosh, I'm in the wrong race." Well, you just let our timer know we changed the division, and 5 seconds later, that's changed, and it's very simple. So you know, certainly over the recent years, we've certainly impressed a lot of folks that come to our events with our not only the presentation of our results on our 6 40-inch monitors to the accuracy of it and how quickly things are posted. That's been very important. Uh, and the fact that things can be changed very easily and updated, uh, and that always makes people happy. But you're right. Yeah, timing is difficult, but we feel like we've kind of overcome that as far as the multi-sport racing goes. We really don't service a lot of events for timing. We're usually involved in larger events and that are subcontracting another timer if we're managing the operations of it. But if it's a triathlon, we certainly are the timer for the event.
So if it was was it 1988, 1989 you started?
We came up with this idea. I was a senior in high school in 1987. Our first race was 1988.
So So you have been putting on races since the second term of Ronald Reagan. Is and so the difference, as you've gone through 1988 to 2020, if you take those 32 years, and there's a lot of differences. But in terms of the industry, in terms of athletes, you've seen ebbs and flows. What do you think are the top two or three things that what would be two or three things that have stood out to you in the 32 years? And if you had a new race director, say the folks that are getting involved, what would be the two or three pieces of advice to those folks?
Wow, the big thing is just expectations from the athletes. I mean, you go back to 1988. You know, race results was being you did that on you had tick sheets. If anybody here knows what tick sheets are, all they are is just a bunch of grids where if you were able to write down a number and look at your watch, that's what you did as an athlete passed by, and then at the end of the day, you tried to throw together a final results, a couple hours after the last finisher, and then do some sort of award ceremony, and then you mailed out the results that with the splits in it 3 or 4 weeks later. We, and a lot of my decisions that I've made in this business were because I've always been a triathlete. I got, my first race was, I did my first duathlon in high school. So I absolutely loved the sport. And just as much as I do today, I love the age group, uh, format of it, and that you can be an 80-year-old world champion. So to me, it's like, I'm going to do this until they put me under the ground, and so I love it. So, but it's all, that's my perspective. So when I looked at as we moved along in the industry, I made changes from the athlete's point of view. I was always wanting certain things for the betterment of the athlete, whether that's even back then. I was like, oh my gosh, this results! I can't believe I just did this race, and I've been waiting weeks and weeks. And I can remember when it finally come, and you'd get this race results booklet, and you'd look at the results. So my first thing I did that I'm like, no one's doing this, but we're going to be the first company in the U.S. to do this. We would compile the results. Well, first of all, we'd finish the race, we'd do the awards, then we'd drive home. We'd stay up all night calculating by hand the splits. And then the goal was to go to a 24-hour print service, print off the results, put all the labels on it, and get it into the post office before midnight, so that amazingly people would be getting these results in their hands 24 hours later. So maybe if you lived in the same zip code as us, the next day, or at the latest 2 or 3 days later. No one was doing that, and so that was an amazing thing that we started, and then eventually that led to, of course, now it's instantaneous results. You got to have all that, but yeah, to me, this anyone that would be new coming into this, especially specifically for multi-sport racing, you have to be aware of your customers. I mean, and I think that's been easier for me because I remain a customer. I am a triathlete. I have the high expectations. This is a lifestyle sport, but it takes a pretty unique individual to balance swimming, biking, and running, career, family. So that's a unique customer demographic. So you better be aware of that. So you better build out everything that you do at that race based on that. that demographic, because that is the majority of folks that are coming to your race.
So you've had, I mean, this year has to be, would you say this year is one of the, if not the most challenging year you've had as a race director? How have you handled the expectations of, hey, we were planning to do all this great racing this year, but that's not going to happen uh, as much, or maybe there's postponement, deferral. What have you put out there, and then what have the expectations of the athletes been?
Well, as soon as uh, the pandemic kind of got rolling, um, so I guess that would be about the second week of March. Um, we run a camp in Arizona the first week of March. So I have a good buddy that's got a high level position with the Secretary of State's office in Ohio. And he gave me warnings in mid February that there's going to be major issues with this. And hardly anybody even knew about it. And I was like, and I just laughed him off. And I just couldn't believe it. And so everything was going on as normal. Uh, we had our camp in Arizona. We had a great camp, and I can even remember at the camp. At the end of the day, we'd always meet and for dinner together with everybody, and we'd flip on the TV at the headquarters house that we were staying at, and we starting to build the news about this, and we were almost like we were in our own little world. It's like we were almost mocking the fact that the news were just freaking out over this, and we just couldn't. It was so unbelievable in our opinion that the way that people were reacting. And so we went about. We finished up our camp, and then 2 days later, after I got home, our governor has his first press conference, and everything changed. The one thing that my wife and I wanted to do immediately was not be the last to figure out what's going on, and we've always been really good at communicating with our athletes. So immediately we put together a game plan of what we wanted to do and how we were going to communicate with our athletes, and we did it immediately. The first thing I did is like, well, I'm not sure what's going on, but I don't feel comfortable continuing to sell registration. So we immediately turned off registration on all of our races, and we suspended the races, and then we sent out the press release, and that explained our situation and explained what our governor had just stated, and we will give updates as we get them. And at the time, I still didn't think, I still was thinking Triple T had a good chance of happening. Because if not, I knew it was going to, it was going to really be a significant issue for all of our spring and early summer events. And as we decided, okay, this is a unique situation. There's no race director out there that's going to be like, oh yeah, we've dealt with this before. Here's how you do it, because no one has. So the only thing I thought of was like, well, we're going to tell them what we can. We're going to be honest with them. We're going to let them know there's no way, if you register and we have to move this race, can we just write you a check for a refund? Because that's not possible. We're still running. We got to still exist as a company. That we have to put together a transfer plan. We got to communicate that immediately. And so we put that in that original communication. And then we decided, well, because no one knows what's going on, the best thing we can do is communicate with our athletes. So the person that manages our social media, I told her, I said, Melanie, put together a plan so that we communicate every week some sort of update with our athletes. And that's what we're doing every week, just trying to update it. And it's based on what we're allowed to do. And as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, it isn't looking real good. It's not looking good for anybody putting on multi-sport races. I mean, I'm praying that the fall running season gets to happen, because that's an enormous part of our business. But we're also prepping for, a full-on cancellation of events. and we're going to have to wait till 2021. We're still working on new events. We're still, we got an exciting event we're getting ready to announce. That's going to be a massive announcement for the state of Ohio. But it's for 2021, and I certainly hope that 2021, the whole year is back to normal. But we just don't know that. So, Tom, that's what we have to sit around and wait for. And there's whether you're Ironman or if you're HFP or if you're the first time race director guy, we just don't. There's so many unknowns. You don't know. We don't have control, and that's and most race directors are control freaks, and that's the only way you're good at it. If you're not a control freak, you're not a good race director. So this is tough. This is tough sitting around waiting on somebody else to tell you when you're going to do your job.
You've been doing this for 32 years, so you I'm sure you have a lot of goodwill. So, when you talked about, say, moving Triple T, offering a deferral till next year, I'm sure you got a really good and warm response from your athletes, right?
Oh, incredible. I even had one of the coaches that had 26 athletes in the race. He's like, do not give us a referral fee. We're going to re-sign up at the full price when you open registration. We got your back. That's the kind of stuff. Right now I just gave me goosebumps. This community is incredible, and we have a GoFundMe page right now that's got an amazing response to it. Athletes are just pouring towards it. The notes they're leaving with it. I've gotten checks in the mail from people just randomly. I know I can't race this year, but here's a check for the entire season. That's the kind of stuff. This is an unprecedented time, and the reaction from the great folk. There's no doubt, to be a race director, as hard as it is, this is a position that most folks would be envious of regarding a customer base. Most folks that run a business, to have a customer base that's so loyal and so professional and friendly, that is literally 99% of our customers. 1%, there's always some bad in every demographic. But I'll tell you what, for the most part, triathlon, the multi-sport community are amazing. All you got to do is go to a major event and that vibe that's there. Go to age group nationals. I just love it. And so the response. I'm telling you, there has not been 3 people that have sent us anything negative.
Well, Shannon, I think that has a lot to do with the brand that you've built over 3 decades. And I just wanted to say, thank you so much for joining us on California Triathlon Soup. Is there anything that you want to leave us with, or or maybe some thoughts for your athletes or the community in general? I think you've done a really good job already, but if there's anything you want to leave us with, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, my thought would be just continue to support your local race director. Send them some money, send them a nice email, tell them you're going to be there next year or the next race or whenever you can get out there. Post positive things on the Facebook page. When you see somebody send some flaming response on social media, get out there and support those race directors that have a thankless job, that do this. Believe me, most race directors could go and make a lot more money doing another job, but this is something that you have to do because you love it and you have passion for it. And what we're seeing is, like I said, an incredible response from our customers. But those that are listening, I hope this inspires them to support their local race directors and get out there and make sure that you have their back.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us on California Triathlon Suit today. And we wish you and Jennifer and your three kids as good of a 2020 as you can have. And we'll see you on the course real soon.
Hey, thanks so much, Tom. Appreciate being here.